Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I'm bringing you another complete run madness, although this is a run within a run, but I consider it to be a complete run anyway. And what are we looking at today? It's Green Lantern Green Arrow, the second run, issues 90 through 122. Now, of course, when it comes to Green Lantern Green Arrow, the original run is the one that gets, all the hype. That's the famous run from issues 76 to 89. All these famous classic covers and famous classic stories. And then the series got canceled with issue 89, and 4 years later they bring it back, kicking it back off with issue 90. Same writer, Denny O'Neil. Instead of Neil Adams, they come back with the Neil Adams clone in the form of Mike Grell, and totally different focus. So this is just straight up superheroics. There's very little social commentary, and as a result, the stories are pretty forgettable, but I'm a big fan of Green Arrow, so that's why I put this run together. Green Arrow for me is a really interesting character. It's one of these characters that has sort of the secret series, and what I mean by that is, he debuted in 1941, and from 41 up until 1964, Green Arrow had an ongoing series for the whole 20 plus years, but never had his own title. So he appeared as a strip or as a backup strip in More Fun and in Adventure and in World's Finest. And then he was featured in Justice League, but he never got his own strip. Even in the 40s, he was in multiple books at the same time. He was in leading comics with the Seven Soldiers of Victory, but again, never got his own title. Then there was a brief period starting in 64 where he didn't have his own title for just a little bit. Just a little bit, he didn't have his own solo strip for about 5 years, and then of course they revamped the character. Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Brave and the Bold 85, and then they did a little more revamping right after that in Justice League of America 75, and those stories led directly into Green Lantern Green Arrow 76. And so when that series ended, he immediately got a backup in Flash, because they took the next issue of Green Lantern Green Arrow that was already done. They cut the story up into installments in that run as a Flash backup. Then he got his own backup series in Action Comics, and was in Action until this series. And then after this series ended, in fact, while this series was still going on, Green Arrow got his own solo strip that was coming out at the same time as this in World's Finest. So for a while, again, there were 2 Green Arrow books coming out. You could get Green Arrow in this, which is technically still Green Lantern in the indicia. You could also read his adventures in every issue of World's Finest, his solo adventures. And when this ended, he continued in World's Finest. And then when his World's Finest series ended, he moved over to Detective Comics. He did get a mini-series in the mid-80s, but he had the Detective run, and that went right up until, basically until Longbow Hunters in 1987. So we have a character who's got 46 years, and in those 46 years, there was only a 5-year period where he didn't have his own strip, but he never had his own title over those 40 continuous years of stories. So I find that fascinating. There was a period when I was collecting Green Arrow stuff, where I was trying to put all of that together, starting with Brave and the Bold 85, all of his Silver and Bronze Age runs. And at one point I actually did it. With the exception, I was missing a couple issues of Detective, but I no longer have most of those. So I don't have the Action run anymore. I don't have the World's Finest run anymore. I don't have the Detective run anymore. And actually, I'm probably going to be getting rid of this run. I'm going to have another video soon where I talk about my continuing efforts both to downsize my collection, but also with the breathing issues I've been having because of the mustiness from my collection. That's sort of forced me to pick up steam and really drill down on which comics I want to keep and which comics I'm comfortable getting rid of. And so I'll probably be getting rid of these because just the stories aren't that interesting to me, but they have some great art, great characters, and I wanted to show them off while I still have them. I haven't actually read all of these. I've read some of them, but I never got around to reading the whole run. So here we are, issue 90. This is an issue that has some special nostalgic significance for me because there was a bookstore near my house that had old comics, 50, 60, 80 cents each. This was in like 1985. And this is one of the first back issues I got. Not this copy. I eventually got rid of that and then I rebought it. Here's 91 with a Sinestro cover. These to me are just a disappointment because the original Denny O'Neil run was so influential that these are just they're just kind of boring. No use struggling, we're caught. And Sinestro says, if your buddy misses, we're dead. I love how Sinestro is using the word buddy, and like it doesn't feel like how Sinestro would talk. One of the issues that I have with this run, here's a cool Green Lantern centric cover for issue 93, is that the Green Lantern is so much more powerful than Green Arrow. Here's 94, which has a Green Arrow centric cover, including Black Canary, who's chained to some machinery, but the artwork with the gears here has a very weird effect in it. I don't know, it doesn't really work. It's a tricking the eye where this is popping out where it looks like it's in the foreground instead of the background for me. Their power levels are so completely unequal that it just doesn't work very well for me in this run. Now, it worked better for me in the first run because it was specifically, Green Lantern was taking the tour of America, and the type, the style, and the tone of the stories wasn't about the superhero stuff. So because his superhero powers were a less important aspect of the story, it was okay that they had such wildly different power levels. But when you're having a series that's kind of pure superhero stuff, it just doesn't really work as well. Here's 96. I am a big fan of Mike Grell, though. 97. 98. Larry, my husband, you're not dead. Well, little does she know that this is going to be retconned, so that's actually her father, and she had fake memories implanted in her, making her think she was married to her own father. You can thank Roy Thomas for that. 99. Boxing ring cover. Issue 100. First appearance of the new Airwave. I swear they only brought the character back because his last name was Jordan. And so they thought it would be a fun connection because was anyone like clamoring for Airwave? And yet he had his own like backup series for quite a while in Action Comics. 101. Holy Hannah! How do I save Green Lantern from being strangled by his own ring? These covers look so much less cluttered than the earlier covers when DC had the big banner across the top. It actually looks kind of empty. Like I feel like they needed to move the logo up even a little bit further. 102. There's a lot of space stories, which again makes perfect sense for Green Lantern, but Green Arrow just seems really out of his element. 103. The bad guy in this cover is very awkwardly drawn. 104. I'm a big fan of Black Canary as well. It's cool to have her involved in these stories and on the covers and stuff. Here's a Grell Black Canary cover, so that's always cool. 105. It's a cool effect with the waves from this gun sort of chopping up Green Lantern like that. That's cool. A lot of these are actually in pretty nice shape, which is unusual for me. But some of these are quite nice. Okay, 107, a sneak preview of a new feature, Tales of the Green Lantern Corps. So we're going to be getting into this brief period where the title is 50 cents instead of 35, and it was 44 pages. It's one of Jeanette Kahn's initiatives to try and get the price point higher so that they would get more real estate on the newsstands. It didn't really work. But we have the return of Alan Scott, so that's cool. It does mean that we get a lot of split covers now. More pages, more action. I love this logo, by the way. This is a great logo for me. It's just a classic logo. Here's a cool Growl cover where the Green Lantern symbol has been branded onto his chest. 111. This is a cool where the Golden Age Green Lantern from Earth 2 teams up with Hal Jordan, so that's cool. And that story continues into the next one, where we got Green Lantern and Green Arrow and Green Lantern, but no sign of the Earth 2 Green Arrow. If there is one. That's so confusing at the end of Crisis. I was so confused by what happened, because I thought the worlds had combined into one, and then after that Green Arrow dies, but it turns out, I don't know, I was so confused by the end, by all of Crisis, but particularly by the last couple issues. 113. One of these, this is actually not quite as nice as some of the other ones. 114. Okay, so I have this one signed. Covers by Alex Saviuk. You can see I have his signature here in the middle. I've got his signature on a couple more of these. The villain they're fighting is called the Crumbler, which I'm sure he's like the scourge of day-old cookies and muffins, but it's not exactly the most frightening supervillain moniker. 116. Green Lantern, stop charging your power ring before it's too late. This issue is the second appearance of Guy Gardner. And it's an issue where he takes over as Green Lantern for a bit because Hal gets knocked out of commission. I think the first Guy Gardner story is actually like an imaginary story. I'm not sure, I haven't read it, but that's what I've heard. So in some ways, I guess this is considered the first Guy Gardner. It's worth a little bit. It's not worth nearly as much as his first appearance, but it is sort of the only real kind of minor key in this whole run. 117. And you'll notice this, the last issue had dropped from 50 cents down to 40. Oh, well, I guess it was a couple issues ago. But yeah, they're like, hey, look, we dropped the price. It was 35 cents. He went to 50, and then when he went back to the old size, you set it at 40. It's a sneaky way to get a price increase in there. Boy, here's issue 118. The Crumbler is back. Like, how many issues do we have to fight this stupid villain, the Crumbler? You can see I have this signed by Alex Saviuk. It's not his fault, I don't think. 119. Another Saviuk cover. Giordano is doing the inking on these, so that's cool. And then we'll see on the next cover, 120, it's Giordano doing the pencils. The Golden Sword of Sorcery against the power of the Green Lantern. Who will be victorious after the challenge of El Espectro? El Espectro. The world's foremost spitting villain. And I don't think that's what that means, but I feel like they could have done better with this whole run in terms of the just all around. Another Dick Giordano cover, 121. We have one of the worst taglines green-garbed champions of justice. You sold me. Oh, they're green-garbed. Their garb is green. 40 cents on the counter. I'm buying this one. It doesn't exactly say like world's greatest comic magazine. No, it's the world's most green comic magazine. And then 122. This is the last issue of the team up. It looks like Hal's getting married to Carol Ferris on the cover, and someone's saying stop this wedding, because of course you can never actually make any real changes to the characters. But they did make real change, because after this issue, the next issue, it just says Green Lantern. And it's got like a classic cover, which I swear I have, but I don't know where it is. Yeah, last issue of the run. Again, I love the team up between the two. I love the friendship. I love the characters. There's a lot of good creators that worked on this run. But it just fundamentally doesn't make sense without the focus of the original series. And as a pure superhero book, these are just like typically boring late Bronze Age DC books. Like DC superhero stuff in the 70s is just almost across the board mediocre at best. There's a lot of stuff that's downright unreadable, but there's a lot of stuff that's just sort of like, yep, that was a comic book. But it's just, it's so disappointing. It's so disappointing. But there it is. I enjoyed putting the run together. I enjoyed having the run in my possession. I never really enjoyed reading it, which is why I never finished it. But this first one in particular is always going to have a lot of nostalgia for me. Even if I end up selling this run off, I'll probably get another copy of that one just for the old nostalgia bank. But let me know what you think below. Do you like this run? Do you like the team up? Do you like the new focus starting with issue 90, where it's just superhero stuff and there's a lot of space stuff and a lot of terrible villains like the Crumbler? Like, do you like this better? I know there's a lot of people that don't really like the original run anymore because it feels very dated in how it's addressing these social issues. And for me, you know, I read it in the context of what was happening at the time in comics and in the world. And I don't have a problem with it being kind of heavy-handed, because that, I think, was what was necessary. There was no scaffolding. There was nothing for it to build on to be subtle. And I've had that conversation in previous videos, but I think we're in a position now where we're able to look back on that as being heavy-handed and clumsy, because that paved the way for us to have more nuanced conversations. So I don't mind those issues, and I love the art. And so the first run for me still holds up, but this one not so much. But I know there's other people that disagree, so let me know what you think below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.